Boom shakalaka, ladies and gentlemen, freaks and geeks. We got the chocolate noobs, aka the esoteric noetic, in the house. Yours truly, Krishool. And I thought I would have a look at this video I came across titled "Vegan Leaves Charlie Kirk Hungry for a Burger." Oh, so Charlie Kirk is one of the prominent figures in the conservative movement, the creator, I believe, a founder of Turning Point USA. And you gotta love the title. I find this is something meat eaters often tend to do when they're trying to get at vegan activists. So whenever a vegan activist is making their argument, they'll say something like, well, I'm going to eat a burger for every time you don't eat one, and I'm going to go have a burger, I'm going to go eat more meat just to really lay into my point that you can't control me, that kind of thing. And you know, what I find interesting about this debate is that it's usually positioned from the pro meat eater side that, well, look, it's just a personal choice. So, you know, you get to eat what you want to eat. I get to eat what I want to eat. And it's not a personal choice because it involves, realistically, the idea of having to slaughter an animal, kill an animal, a sentient being, in order for you to eat your meat. Now, granted, if you were just eating your meat, let's say if it was a dead animal, that would be one thing. But the whole idea is that these animals are dying so that you can eat them. Essentially, butchers, hunters, call them what you will, are slaughtering animals so you can satiate your gluttonous appetite. And that's not really a personal choice if you're advocating for that. But besides the point, let's get into this video and let's see what Charlie Kirk has to say in regards to this.
Yes. Hi, with the Republican Party that traditionally prides itself on personal responsibility, for a Republican Party that prides itself on personal responsibility, protecting the sentient unborn, and free markets, I was curious your thoughts on animal rights, just because the government subsidizes animal agriculture far more than fruits and vegetables and plant foods, which inhibits the free market and ends up slaughtering lots of animals.
That is true. The American government and most governments around the world do subsidize the cost of meat and dairy. So yeah, that's a powerful argument. A lot of people don't realize that. You know, a lot of people also make the argument that I can't afford to eat fruits and veggies. Well, they're actually the cheapest foods, but it just so happens sometimes you end up paying more money for it because your government is actually subsidizing the cost of meat and dairy. I mean, plant-based foods are always going to be cheaper. Now, I'm not talking about your high cuisine vegan fast food meals, but I'm talking about your staples: rice, corn, legumes, these things. These are always going to be cheaper. And I mean, considering on a very practical level, you often have to feed animals these plant-based foods in order to grow them. And I always find it funny when people use harvest as a word to define how you're actually it's like you're growing crops when you're actually doing this to animals, right? You're essentially growing them so that you can eat them. You mean slaughtering them. But yes, you do that, and it costs you more money down the line. So it's actually a very good argument that, yeah, if you're eating meat, it's essentially always going to be more expensive because the government subsidizes the cost of these foods. And the greater underlying issue here is that these foods require a victim, and there's an ethical issue in regards to that.
And animals are also sentient beings like the unborn. So I was curious your thoughts on all of that.
Yeah, so the question is first, is an animal a human?
No.
Okay, so does it therefore have rights?
The question is not is an animal a human? I mean, humans are a form of animal. I mean, depending on what animal we're talking about here, a tiger is an animal, and so are humans. Humans, scientifically, biologically, are considered an animal. Now, granted, I realize this is a definitional thing. A lot of people are like, well, you know, we're special. We have special abilities. Therefore, we're not classified as animal. Well, technically speaking, you know, from the classical definition, yes, humans are a type of animal. But that's immaterial to the point here. Do humans have rights? Yes, but all sentient beings have rights. Rights are not something that are given to only human beings. They are endowed by our Creator, if you want to take on the biblical perspective, or from a secular perspective, they're inherent in the nature of being. If you have the consciousness, the awareness, to be aware of your own awareness, you have these rights. They're unalienable. They are endowed. They are a given. The idea of saying just because you are a human, you have these rights, and you know what? no other being has this right because, hey, they're not human. So let's say if a more advanced alien species comes down to planet Earth, and I would make the argument this is already present if you're really keeping up to date with what's going on in the world right now, and they suddenly decide to treat humans in the same way we treat animals and make the argument, well, you humans, you're just humans, and, we are, we are the Anunnaki, or we are the reptilians, or we are the Greys, therefore, look, we have rights, but you guys don't have rights, so we get to do what the hell we want to you. That would be an absolutely illogically inconsistent, unwise, and stupid argument. And it shows the intellectual immaturity, in my humble opinion, of someone to make the argument that, well, we only get rights because we're human and they don't apply to anyone else. If you're trying to be consistent across the board, that is a demonstrably flawed argument, which is what I think he's trying to imply by saying that.
I mean, we already have rights for animals, for dogs, cats, and even for some farm animals.
But do you get First Amendment protections for your dog? Can your dog own a firearm, right?
No.
Well, your dog would not have the ability to own a firearm. And the First Amendment, I mean, there are certain human constructs, but the basic idea of natural law is that you don't have a right to harm someone. I mean, this is where we get the whole idea of natural rights from. Clearly, it would not be the right of me to go and fucking kill an animal or kill any sentient being for that matter because I don't own that sentient being. Now, the right to bear arms, I mean, it's not even something that needs to be stated. You have a right to use whatever weapon or anything that you want, providing you're not harming anyone in the process. This is where I find a lot of conservatives that have a very rudimentary understanding of natural rights get this stuff twisted. They think, well, it's in the Constitution, therefore it's a right. No, the basic idea is that you have these rights because provided someone is not harming you, is not infringing on your own personal sovereignty, you get to do what you will. If that involves you having a firearm, if that involves you traversing your land, I mean, this is the basis of what we call natural rights, natural law. This is where it stems from, the idea that provided you are not harming anyone in the process, you get to do as you will. And this would extend to any sentient being. Animal rights are the logical extension of human rights. But if you take on this attitude that, well, if this is more of a legal idea, well, it's in the Constitution that I have a First Amendment. Animals don't have that, so, hey, animals don't have any rights. That's a flawed form of reasoning.
No, of course not. So it's not the same thing as a human.
Yeah,
now,
I'm not saying
Now,
it's
as
it.
a Christian, we're also not allowed to torture or to slaughter. That's in the Noahic covenant and repeatedly out the scriptures. We must be humane in our treatment of animals. But I don't know where you're coming at from this perspective, but some people would say that animals and humans are on the same moral plane. I don't think that's what you're saying, right? However, there is a push, though, to say that we should no longer eat meat because it's bad for...
Okay, so let's break this down. He's making this argument that in the Bible, essentially, we have to treat these animals humanely, whatever the fuck that means. I hate when people make this argument, humanely. Does that mean you're allowed to kill and slaughter them? I mean, substituting the word humane doesn't somehow take away from the fact that you're killing, you're slaughtering animals. I mean, if I was to call it humane what, let's say, the Nazis did to, let's say, the Jews, right? Just as a hypothetical, Godwin's law, got to bring it up. Well, you couldn't call that humane, right? But what's interesting is Goebbels, this is Hitler's propaganda minister, would make the argument that when the SS guards were taking the Jews, lining them up in the concentration camps or to get essentially gas in the gas chambers, he would tell the SS guards not to pull them by the hair, right? And I guess to do it more humanely. Rather than telling him, hey, don't be gassing Jews, don't be doing that kind of stuff because it's fucking wrong. Hey, do it more humanely. And I always use this to illustrate the idea that just because you are somehow snuffing someone to death or you're killing them slowly doesn't make it right. I mean, humane slaughter is an oxymoron. It's like gentle genocide. It's like what the Israeli government is doing to the Palestinians, right? This is something else that I know Charlie Kirk support. I mean, you can call that humane with that kind of logic, right? It's fucking wrong. End of story. The idea of using the word humane doesn't justify something more so. And saying that, well, it's even if you make the argument that it's in the Bible, therefore it's okay, which is a completely erroneous argument because it's humans that wrote the Bible, and any person with even a semblance of morality understands that it You wouldn't want to do something like that to a sentient being because you wouldn't want it done to yourself. I mean, you face a child in front of an animal, and that child, that little baby, doesn't want to slaughter that thing because it intrinsically would feel that it's wrong. And any person that is not completely disconnected from their anahata realizes that you see this connection with these sentient beings and you don't want to see them slaughtered. That's why it's a lot easier for people to delegate the slaughter to butchers and other people and say it's been done humanely, because you don't have to see the look in these beings' eyes when they're being slaughtered. But that's immaterial to my point, which is that just because it's in the Bible and just because you call it humane doesn't actually make it moral. If you slaughter or you do something that is wrong to someone, you can't justify that being moral. Doing something that is wrong the right way doesn't make it right. And this is essentially what Charlie Kirk is advocating for. This is a very immature argument, and it shows he's somewhat new to this kind of conversation, because he's making very low-grade arguments here.
The life of animals. We should do what's best for human beings, first and foremost, and it's good for human beings to eat meat. It's good.
Oh my God, I love this argument. We should do what's best for human beings, right? Just like the southern plantation owners would say, well, we need to do what's in the best interest of our white people. Well, it's all right to have slaves because it's the best interest of my people. It's all right to the butcher them and to make them, to rape them and do what we want to them because, you know, it's in our best interest. I mean, this is a very morally flawed argument. These are the utilitarian arguments that were used to justify slavery. These are the utilitarian arguments that were used to justify the genocides that have been committed. And I mean, these are the utilitarian arguments that used to justify pretty much all the horrible things we see going on in the world. Well, you know, it's in the interest of my group. And granted, he's saying it's in the interest of humanity here. Just because something, I mean, is this the mentality that we seem to have in the world? Well, as long as something is perceivably in the interest of our species, it's acceptable. So we don't care about the other species, we don't care about the environment, and let's say hypothetically, and I don't really think this is hypothetical, there are other sentient species out there that we are not aware of, or at least some of us. I would say that there are actual more intelligent beings on this in this Euclidean meat space reality. I mean, are we going to make the argument that we don't care about them? We just have to do what's in the best interest of our species, the human race? I mean, we can bring this down to the level of white people, of our country, or humanity. But how about having a more holistic perspective and doing what is in the best interest of all the sentient beings? You know, one of the things that frustrates me about so many of these people like Charlie Kirk is they don't really believe in freedom. They think freedom only concerns people that think like them. It's like, we don't really have a freedom movement in this world unless we have a freedom movement that is inclusive of not just the black people, not just the white people, not just the animal, the humans, but all the beings that share this planet with us. You know, we have to realize that as above, so below. You know, as long as we slaughter the creatures below us that we seem to be more technologically advanced than, then why on earth should we expect people that are above us, and I believe there are people above us, these oligarchs, these rulers, to treat us any better? I mean, they can make the argument, well, it's in the best interest of us rich people or us more advanced alien species to do what's in the best interest of us. It's such a myopic mindset to have. And to hear someone make that argument in the 21st century, we have to do what's in the best interest of us, is very disappointing. And I don't even agree with the idea that it's in their best interest. I mean, this is very subjective and this is very dubious, but I'd actually say it's probably more damaging than a lot of people realize in terms of eating these animals and what it does to the environment and so forth. Obviously more of a dubious topic, but yeah, I don't think it's good for you in the long term. I don't think it's good for the planet. And I don't think it's good for your soul, your consciousness, if you want to get metaphysical on this. There's a reason why so many of the ancients actually avoided eating animal-based foods, because it was essentially poison your spirit. But that's another thing entirely.
Good for human beings to be able to eat animals. It's good for human beings to not just eat like this synthetic fake meat that Bill Gates wants to make all day long. And so, yeah,
I was waiting for that. One of the things I find people often do is they peel, because Bill Gates in the truth community, and let's be honest, Not many people like Bill Gates, understandably, given in light of a lot of the things he did in more recent years. But people make this argument, well, Bill Gates is in favor of this, so it must be bad. Like this argument that, oh, wait a sec, a bad person is supporting something that is good, therefore that thing which is good now must be evil. It's like, well, Hitler was a vegetarian, so, well, vegetarianism is bad. Or, well, this shady character is against Israel committing genocide on Palestine. Therefore, well, I mean, you can't say something is good or bad based on who supports it. You have to look at that thing for what it is. And I think any person that is being rational here realizes that people living a more plant-based diet, if the alternative requires you to kill, slaughter sentient beings, is a better thing. And the idea, you could have the worst person in the world, like serial killers, supporting that, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it is still a good thing. And this is what I believe Charlie Kirk is implying here, that Bill Gates is obviously in support. Now, Bill Gates is in support of GMOs and a whole bunch of other things. I mean, if you really want to go deep into this kind of stuff, it's actually very twisted. I don't support what Bill Gates is fundamentally trying to do by trying to patent so many of the different seeds and so forth, gain a monopoly on this stuff and trying to genetically modify these foods and essentially insert vaccines into many of these different foods and so forth, which is what we're currently doing, at least in the Western world at the moment. But that's besides the point. Just because someone is advocating for a plant-based diet, even if they're bad, doesn't make that idea good or bad. I could be the worst criminal in the world or the most immoral person, and I could say, hey, you know what? It's bad to rape people. Is it now suddenly... am I suddenly now false because of the fact that my character somehow has merit on what I say? I mean, let's be real about this shit.
Where do I stand on animal rights? I mean, I don't think any living being should be tortured or should be cruelly treated.
Then we're in agreement. Fantastic. So you don't believe in these animals being slaughtered, essentially, which is what has to happen in order for them to be eaten, right? I mean, unless, of course, you found some new way of genetically engineering meat, which we pretty much can do now, which is kind of crazy, right? I think this argument is going to be irrelevant in the next 10, 20 or so years because, I mean, we're essentially seeing it now through in vitro meats and things like that. You can essentially harness, you can create meats, these mock meats through plant-based foods, and it can be done in a very healthy way. I do realize that a lot of the plant-based foods are not healthy. Don't get me wrong. These are the mock meats and so forth, but it can be done in a very healthy way, and I think that's the real deciding factor here. But I do believe the underlying issue is an ethical one. It's I think unless, of course, we realize that we no longer we shouldn't have the right to treat any sentient being in a less way just because we are more powerful than they are. Unless we come to that realization, we're going to see the same permutations of problems manifesting themselves in this Euclidean meat space again and again and again. I mean, we saw this with slavery a few hundred years ago and throughout the history of so much of the ancient world. And we're seeing this in many different permutations now. It's like, well, we're better. We get to rule over them. And I see this from the conservatives. I see this from the communists. I see this from even vegans, I mean, I don't get this thing twisted. I don't take an us versus them mentality. My team is the team of truth and the team of, well, all sentient beings for that matter. But I think it's very easy to get caught up in, well, we're better than you, therefore you deserve to be treated badly. And I think this is what a lot of Charlie Kirk's message tends to revolve around.
At the same time, we should always do what's best for human beings and human beings first. So, for example, when there's an environmental question, the question should first be, what is best for the human species, not what's best for the trees or for the snake. Those things are important, but it's more important about...
Look, to an extent, I mean, within reason, but there's a distinction between actually violating someone. Like, for instance, if I was to say, well, look, I'm going to focus on the black race, right? So I'm going to focus on developing the communities within the black race. Now, personally, I don't take on that route because I don't like the whole identity politics thing. But if people wanted to do that, that's well within their right. But if you were to say, hey, look, well, I don't care about other races, so I'm going to start killing ginger people, Caucasians, anyone that is not 100% black, even though that's not even a thing, well, then we have a problem. The issue here isn't the fact that you're focusing on humanity or focusing on your country. The fact is, the issue is that you're willing to actually perform genocides or kill, slaughter billions of other sentient beings, or indirectly do that, have that delegated to other people and say, hey, look, man, I'm doing humanely. That is the real issue here.
For humans. Does that answer your question? Or
In part is okay if I have a little follow-up.
Please, yeah.
I mean, in terms of what rights we give to animals, of course we wouldn't give animals the right to drive a car or vote because it's not relevant to them. But the rights that would...
Absolutely. I mean, it's not like you get... This is the thing people get twisted. You don't so much as give rights to people. You discover them. Animals don't have the right to drive because they can't drive. They don't have the ability to do so. They can't manufacture cars. They can't drive a car. But animals have the right to, obviously, move around, to experience life. It's more the fact that they have a right to not be aggressed on. And provided they are not harming anyone, they should be able to do as they will. This is essentially how we discover rights. It's not like we just make up rights. This is where people get this shit twisted. So many of the progressives and the conservatives have this twisted idea that rights can be pulled out of thin air and we can somehow make them up. And even though they take away from someone's natural rights, they're acceptable. That's not how it's defined. That's not how Thomas Jefferson defined it. That's not how it was defined within the Declaration of Independence. That's not how it works within common law. And that's not how it works within Lockean property right. Any person that has a truly deep understanding of natural rights realizes that, yes, it comes from the idea that they are inherent within the nature of being, or they come from God. But they're not just some arbitrary list that you can pull up. They're not what you call positive rights. Like, I have a right to your property. I have a right to have you come and help me. That's not how it works. Rights are always defined in the negative. They're always defined as a way of defending people from being aggressed upon, defending people from having their rights violated, their right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, provided they're not harming anyone else in the process.
Would be relevant to them are basic negative rights, the right not to be mistreated or killed. And we already...
This guy gets it. You know, when someone drops the word negative rights, I'm like, yep, they know what they're talking about. So many of the momos I find don't know the distinction. This is why they get this whole thing twisted.
We have that for cats and dogs, and even cruelty laws on farm animals.
Well, we're allowed to kill dogs. That's not true. We have kill shelters for dogs, right? We also kill dogs that bite their owners and dogs with rabies, right?
Okay, now this is getting a bit more nuanced. We're talking about, one, punishment, which is very subjective. I mean, let's say a dog has bitten a human being, has tried to kill a human being. Obviously, we try to prevent that from going on again. Now, I would say that because they don't have the same level of awareness as human beings, in the same way that we treat a child when they've done something that's wrong, we don't offer maximal punishment for them. They don't have the same level of awareness, consciousness. With greater consciousness comes greater responsibility. So, whereas if we have more of an awareness and we have more responsibility. I think it follows that we should be more lenient towards animals, but it's not to take away the argument that there shouldn't be some kind of restrictions on dogs that misbehave and so forth in order to prevent that from happening to us. But the other argument of just euthanizing them for safety reasons. That's something that I don't subscribe to. In the same way that, look, I wouldn't euthanize a human against its will. That's what you call murder. I wouldn't euthanize an animal against its will. I mean, granted, you do something when it's in the best interest of that animal and you know that it doesn't want to live, and this is somewhat of a subjective argument that you can make. But we certainly should not do that towards animals that are simply just a waste of space in our eyes and pose too much of a risk to us. I don't subscribe to that worldview, which I think Charlie does, being the conservative that he is.
Right? So if a human being gets rabies, what do? We treat the human. If a dog gets rabies, unless there's like a miraculous treatment, which there usually isn't, right? So you're right. The negative rights, we do have rights to be able to, for better or for worse, because we do not treat dogs and cats as the same moral level, because we as human beings have a soul, we have reason, we have the ability.
That's such a demonstrably disgusting argument. So I hate this, and I find a lot of the biblically minded people have this idea, the idea of thinking that animals don't have souls. I mean, how soulless would you have to be to think that? Do these people have pets? How on earth can you look into the eyes of a dog or a cat, right, and think that this animating force that governs all beings, all human beings, right, that is well within your family, is not the same stuff that is within other animals? I find it such a weird thing when people say that. Yes, it's clear that animals don't have the same level of awareness that we do. But in the same way, if I looked at someone that was mentally deficient, had an IQ of under 70, I would still see a soul within them. I would still believe that they would have every right to not be aggressed upon. They'd have negative rights at the very least, obviously. And I wouldn't think it would be more acceptable for me to perform some kind of violence on them. And the same applies to these animals. Like the idea of saying that they're devoid of souls, that somehow justifies us in treating them badly, is not only unwise, is not only lacking empathy, but it's intellectually immature.
To make sense of the natural world, dogs do not, right? Dogs only have senses. They do not have reason. And so, for example...
I find it so weird when humans tend to do this kind of stuff. Well, other animals, they don't have our ability to reason. And there's just so much science to show. I mean, we can talk about the different kinds of birds. We can make the argument with dolphins and orcas that they're actually more intelligent than us in many different ways. And as Einstein said, if we measure a fish's intelligence by its ability to walk on the land, I mean, obviously we have somewhat of a fucked up metric here, and this is what we're doing as human beings. We're looking at our ability to actually manipulate this physical environment with our hands, right, and saying, oh, we're so intelligent, we have reasoning, not realizing that many of these animals do not have that ability because they don't have the same ability to manipulate the reality, but they are intelligent in many, many different ways. And it's been shown that dogs have the intelligence of some 8-year-old kids and so forth. I mean, border collies particularly, but there's a whole range of animals that would actually rival humans, and I'd actually say are more intelligent than most humans. The idea of saying that they don't have reasoning ability is so... This is epistemologically is so retarded. I mean, for someone to be in the 21st century and to make that as a generalization, I mean, granted, you can make the argument, yes, obviously humans show more intellect in many different ways, but to make that argument just as a general argument, dogs don't have reasoning ability, is just so dumb. I mean, maybe they just reason a different way. They're more right-brained. They're more intuitive. They can read your facial gestures. They know when you're sad. They're able to think. People say dogs don't have any sense of time, but they measure time in different ways through their scent. I mean, they navigate this physical world in a different way that shows intellect. Just because they don't do it in the same way that we do it doesn't mean they're stupid. I think it takes a low level of consciousness in order to view reality like that, to say, I mean, I think it shows a level of intelligence to be able to recognize intelligence in different ways within other people. When I hear people that are ostensibly intelligent saying, well, these people are dumb and stupid, it actually shows to me that they are so removed from the ability to see intellect on a wider spectrum within other beings that they resort to that. They don't have that ability to actually detect it within other beings. They just say that these beings are stupid because they don't see things the way that I see it. Look, for instance, I understand that Charlie Kirk is a classically intelligent person, but he just lacks emotional depth and doesn't really have a grounded understanding of consistent logical ethics, and makes these arguments that are fueled based on his own biblical conservative worldview that are actually obfuscated and lacking real morality. That's my opinion. I wouldn't call him stupid, though, just somewhat mentally deficient.
Dog cannot tell that it's a dog. Now, there's some disagreement about that, but we as human beings can make sense of the natural world. We are the speaking beings, to say differently. But no animal should be mistreated. But to say...
Oh, no animal should be mistreated, so slaughtering them is not classified as being mistreated. That's beautiful.
That animals are not allowed to be killed would be therefore an argument against meat, correct?
Right, yeah. And no lies about it, I'm arguing against...
Right, that's very unpopular probably at UW-Madison to get rid of bacon, right? So, I'm just guessing. Yeah,
people, who cares how popular it is? I mean, you can make the argument in different stages of, different civilizations. Actually, been vegetarianism. A lot of people aren't aware has been. Not that this is even an argument that justifies whether or not it's right or wrong, but yeah, it's been prevalent within many different societies. The ancient Egyptians lived on a primarily plant-based diet. The vast majority of people within ancient Egypt, and it's been shown through archaeological evidence, actually lived on a plant-based diet. There have been many civilizations throughout history that did so. Many of the greatest figures, Pythagoras, lived on the vegetable diet. This is essentially where we get it within the Western world. But look, that's besides the point. Even if the vast majority of people were on a plant-based diet, and there are well over 600, 700 million people in the world that are vegans and vegetarians, right? Obviously, it is doable, but who cares if it was 20% or if it was 80%? The vast majority of people doing something doesn't make it moral. We've seen that due to slavery. We've seen that people change as other people tend to change. And if enough people, if we see this critical mass of people adopting something, then people, I would say, are more inclined to change. But that doesn't define whether that thing is right or wrong. It just shows whether people are susceptible to peer pressure or group consensus.
I mean, the reason I'm bringing this up ultimately is these animals that we kill on factory farms. We kill them pigs in gas chambers. We ground up male chicks alive for the egg industry because only the female hens lay eggs. All these different things is because we view animals on not having enough rights to actually protect their livelihood. I'm making an argument that...
Good argument. I'd actually just say it's because people don't really care enough, and people don't really want to really explore what's happening to their food. But yeah, I mean, you could say, I mean, but let's be real. It's not as if once someone actually gets rights that we try treating them differently. I mean, have a look at what's going on in Palestine right now. You know, people don't suddenly say, hey, look, I mean, look at how humans treat most humans. I don't want to be so pessimistic about this, but it's not this. I mean, granted, look, if we had laws in place and actually punished people for actually doing things that were wrong, yeah, that would act as a deterrent, obviously, I think. But someone suddenly having rights doesn't naturally prevent them from being abused. I mean, granted, people changing their perspective in the collective tends to, but yeah, we do see the thing where people typically have to fight for their rights, have to essentially stand up for it. And I guess this is what the problem is with animals. I mean, animals obviously do not have the strength, the ability to fight for themselves. I mean, they have to rely on us, the good guys, at least some of us, to actually defend them. But so has plenty of other societies. I mean, obviously you could say this in regards to women. Women obviously have a lot of rights. That's because there are so many good men out there that are willing to actually champion their rights. And my point is that what we typically see is that when people have the ability to champion their rights, or they're good people that care enough for those that don't have the right to, that's when you see rights actually being upheld. This is what applied to slavery. This is what applied to every injustice that has taken place. This is what's happening with Palestine right now. Obviously, a lot of people are standing up against it, speaking out against it. And this is how, I mean, it's not so much that that's going to necessarily change whether or not these people have rights, because obviously they do, but it will eventually prevent those people from having their rights infringed. Because here's the thing, we all have these rights. It just so happens that people will ignore them unless, of course, you stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up for your right. That's how it works, ladies and gentlemen. You got to get up for your right. Peace, liberty, justice.
We shouldn't obviously give animals rights that aren't relevant to them.
For sure.
But yeah.
So,
I think
so
as a Christian,
if you were a dictator, would you say we cannot kill pigs?
No, I think that should be left up to the free market.
Okay.
The reason I'm concerned about it is the government.
Surprised you take on that stance. It should be left up to the free market. No, I just go ahead and said no. The whole idea is there should be certain things that you should be restricted. If you believe, should you be able to rape people? No, I don't. Should you be able to freaking kill people if you don't like the way they smell? No, I don't. Should you be able to kill pigs? No, I know that might be an unpopular argument, but look, it's not even the fact that I think I would like pigs. I think they're very beautiful creatures, you know. I think people have the misguided understanding that they're actually quite clean. But no, because their rights don't deserve to be violated. End of story.
Is spending billions of dollars.
Yeah, I think factory farming has a lot of problems, more because of the health of the human that eats the meat, less than about the animal, because it's just not as good for the human. So thank you. Yeah,
real quick, do you think ultimately that our Republican Party that is pro-free market should be propping up billions of dollars towards subsidies for animal
I'm not a
agriculture?
huge subsidy fan of things that make people fat and unhealthy.
So would you...
All right, so he's going with the fat and unhealthy argument, which is, it's neither... I mean, look, yes, I actually believe that it is a healthier diet, but I mean, I think you could make arguments that in some instances it might be healthier to eat animals. I don't actually believe that, but that you could make an argument like that. But that really is immaterial, ladies and gentlemen. It really doesn't get to the heart of the issue, which is that it's about them. It's not about us in terms of whether or not... It's like, well, imagine if the only question, and this was actually the only question a couple of hundred years ago for a lot of people when it came to slavery, was, should it be acceptable for us to have these slaves? I mean, is it considered healthy for our society, our country? well, I believe that it's a very healthy thing. I have plenty of slaves and I've been able to double my productivity. Therefore, I don't see any reason not to do it. It's obviously not the question. And similarly, it's not the question in regards to whether or not we should eat animals because it's healthy. Even if it were, and I think there are plenty of people that are healthy eating an animal-based diet. I mean, that's the norm, right? But the real question is whether or not we should, dealing with whether or not it is right and moral. That it should be the underlying essence of every issue if you are someone that believes in rights, natural rights, if you believe in justice, truth, because that's ultimately what it comes down to.
If you were in a voting position, either if you were an elected leader, would you vote against, and should Republicans vote against that?
I'm not in a voting position, but yeah, I would advocate I'd advocate against most of our current agricultural subsidies, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, he got there in the end. However, ultimately, Charlie Kirk has the wrong grounding when it comes to this issue. It's like, well, if I consider it good for humanity, it's acceptable. And I mean, if you take on that argument, you could advocate for anything. You could say it's better to drop bombs in countries because it's better for the United States, or it's all right for us to kill babies because it's obviously going to lead to a lot of resources not being used up. And just to add, I don't actually believe that, and I actually also am pro-choice, something that Charlie Kirk is not. And this is something that gets on my nerves, which was also implied in the beginning of this video. Where the activist was saying that obviously Charlie Kirk believes in the rights of the unborn. And yeah, you can, but they don't trump the rights of the live as well. I mean, this whole situation is so weird to me because fundamentally the idea is that, well, if you are someone that is a vegan, obviously you don't believe in animals being killed, and you have to be pro-life, right? Now, you can be pro-life, you can be whatever you want, but you cannot force someone to actually birth another sentient being. It doesn't work like that. If an alien species decided to impregnate or implant something within a human being so it was growing, and that being inside you needed your resources in order to actually come into fruition, you can't force someone to be a host. It doesn't work like that. Now, this is fundamentally what it comes down to. Like, this is the whole idea of rights. Like, you cannot force someone to do something if it's harming them directly. Just in the same way that if my parents were dying or I was dying, I can't take someone's organs and use that in order to keep me alive. And I find this so disturbing. This is another thing that Charlie Kirk often advocates for. And I just find his viewpoints on so many different issues seem to be so inconsistent. And they're essentially just an obfuscation of his Christian worldview. And I find it's so alarming when people take on this mantle of, I am a Christian, I'm a good person. However, I'm going to advocate for dropping bombs on people in Palestine and say that it's a form of self-defense, and advocate for women not to have the right to actually control their own bodies, even if it results in the death of a sentient being. Completely different to the animal rights issue, which is someone actually going and killing an animal, something that they'd have no right to, and doing it in order to satiate their gluttonous appetite, and then saying, oh, well, I need to do it in order to stay healthy, which is a completely erroneous argument. Anyway, these are my thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, let us know in the comments below what you think, what you feel. Share this to your vegan, vegetarian, or omnivore, carnivorous friends. Let it just get their angry comments, get them to come at me. It's all good. Ladies and gentlemen, remember that there are 3 things that cannot remain hidden for long: the sun, the moon, and the wisdomatic truth bombs of yours truly.
I don't